I feel the Spirit moving in me. I feel the Spirit moving in me.
Well, one of my own spiritual teachers, Ziggy, said 6 months ago, I joined a really expensive health club, and I haven't lost a single pound. Apparently, you have to show up. Yes, we have to show up, don't we? We have to show up in order to live our lives fully and to evolve spiritually. We have to be present. And this week, we begin this journey with Brene Brown's new book, Braving the Wilderness. And in order to brave the wilderness, we have to show up. Brene Brown says, true belonging doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. True belonging is not about fitting in, pretending, or making the people around us comfortable because they're safer, because that's safer. The 4 practices of true belonging require us to be vulnerable, get uncomfortable, and learn how to be with people without sacrificing who we are and what we value. The first chapter in Braving the Wilderness is titled Everywhere and Nowhere, based on this quote by Maya Angelou. This chapter and perhaps the idea for this book was inspired. Maya Angelou said, "You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. The price is high, the reward is great." Brene Brown responds to that in the first chapter by saying, "That's just wrong. What kind of world would it be if we belong nowhere? Just a bunch of people coexisting." I don't think she understands the power of belonging. However, further, she goes on to say in her book, for over 20 years, whenever that quote popped up in my life, I felt a rush of anger. Why would she say that? That's not true. Belonging is essential. We must belong to something, to someone, to somewhere. I soon realized that the anger came from 2 places. First, Dr. Angelou had come to mean so much to me that I just couldn't stand the thought that we disagreed on something so fundamental. Second, the need to fit in and the ache of not belonging was one of the most painful threads of my own life. I couldn't accept the idea of belonging nowhere as freedom. Feeling like I never truly belonged anywhere was my greatest pain, a personal suffering that threaded through most of my adult life. It was no way my liberation. Ever feel like that in your life? Like you're alone? Like you don't like the uncomfortability of being alone? That we crave to have somebody else to make us whole, to make us believe in ourselves, to make us all that we are. Brene does come to understand what Maya Angelou meant. And I thought I came up with this slide as kind of a theme slide today because it seems like if we think that we are alone, if we think that we can't do it ourselves, we are sort of caught in this cage of being everywhere and nowhere. So I too struggled with Maya Angelou's quote, and I think I read this chapter 4 times before it finally dawned on me what she meant. And so this is what I think she meant. Oops, that's Renee's quote. To be everywhere and nowhere is the spiritual practice of believing in and belonging to yourself so deeply that you can share your most authentic self with the world and find sacredness in both being a part of something and standing alone in the wilderness. To stand alone in the wilderness is to fully embrace our authentic selves in the midst of coexisting fearful thoughts. Yeah? It takes courage to stand alone. It takes courage and sometimes fear to think outside the box, to think outside the norm. Standing alone in the wilderness sometimes feels like we are alone in some kind of wild and lonely place. True for you. Do you see the difference? Being in the wilderness is being in that place of sort of creative discomfort, where you know that the universe is calling upon you to express and be something more than what others want you to be. I have been told, often in my life, Blaine, you are too sensitive, too silly, too weird, too stupid, and too irreverent.
Me too.
And I especially like the last one. A good friend came up with that one, and she calls me the irreverent reverend. And I love that. That's the way I always thought being a minister was to be, right? Was to be irreverent and out of the box and different. So I could address all of these things, and I'm sure I will in future lessons, and I have addressed some of them in past lessons, but I wanted to look at this one today because this one is one that I've heard a lot of my life, that I am too sensitive. And I started to think about that. Too sensitive. Why? Because I cry at a movie? Or because I can be talking to somebody that's telling me a story and I feel their pain. Sometimes when I'm in spiritual counseling with somebody and they're telling their story, I'll start to cry because I feel it. You know, because whatever my life experiences have been that brought me to this moment, I am a sensitive person. And I think that gives me the opportunity to do the job that I do at the level that I get to do it as, because I am sensitive. Yeah, sometimes I wear my sensitivity on my sleeve. Yeah, sometimes I take things personally. Yeah, and I understand that those are all things that I get to learn and be aware of and work through. True for you. Maybe not about being sensitive, but maybe about being something else. You know, our sense of self-worth should not lie with fitting into somebody else's worldview. Yeah, we are here to be ourselves. We are unique expressions of spirit. When we get too focused on being acceptable or fitting in, we're giving people too much power over how we value and perceive ourselves. And we don't need to give our power away. We need to hang on to who we are and be who we are. We are all individual expressions of spirit, and that spirit wants us to be ourselves. Be yourself. Be powerful. turning inward, and I've done this a lot of my life because I've heard this a lot of my life, and sometimes pushed my own sensitivity away. You know, I remember being at a funeral and I was crying, and I wasn't doing the funeral, even though I have cried at funerals I've done. And I heard somebody say, "He's crying." My first church, one of my congregants said that one of the things he didn't like about my Sunday lessons, and he called them Wayne's tears. He didn't even know my name. But folks have shared with me, and a number of people shared these things with me when I told them that I was going to go into ministry. They said, "Don't ever stop sharing your tears. Don't ever let them take your joy away. Don't ever stop having fun. Don't ever stop being real. Don't ever stop being who you are. Don't stop being who you are. Don't fit into somebody else's idea or mold of what you should be. You are here to be you. That's the gift the Spirit has given you to bring into this planet, because that's how you're going to help people heal and to be here for other people. We have to turn inward and figure out what we value about ourselves and what makes us unique, what makes us worthy, and not measure it against anybody else. I love what Theodore Roosevelt said. He said, "Comparison is the thief of joy." Wow. When we start comparing ourselves to somebody else and try and fit into their mold, our joy is given up. We give it away. Nobody can take it from us. But when we try to compromise and to compare and be anything other than what we are and who we are, our joy is gone. You are here to be who you are. Be who you are. Don't compromise. Don't give yourself away. Don't sacrifice. Live your truth right now. Be present for all you are in every moment. That's what Spirit calls you to do. Be present right now. To love, to live, to be powerful. We are powerful. You are powerful. Don't compromise. Don't compare yourself to others. And if others compare you and say you're too much of this or you're too much like that, you can say, "Thank you for sharing, but this is who I am." Might be too much for you, but it's not too much for me, because this is who I am. Many of us have forgotten how to be authentic because we've been trying for so long to fit into and embody somebody else's idea of who we are. Brene Brown says, to be everywhere and nowhere doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. I'm going to read this one here. It's easier to see than that one up there. Often the reason, Eric Butterworth, a Unity author, minister, quite an icon in Unity, said, often the reason we're not healed, even though we have great faith, is that we sit waiting for a miracle. You must be willing to move your feet. You are now a spiritual being. Jump into the stream and know it. Act as if you are already whole and humbly receptive and responsive to the inner leading that will surely come. You know, we can't We can't listen to that inner voice, and we can't act to that inner voice if we're trying to be something else. Because if we're trying to be something else, we're putting up a shield that doesn't allow our truth to come in. So Spirit says, just relax, be yourself, and listen. Be responsive, and you will be led in the right direction. Ajahn Chah was a Buddhist monk in Thailand. And there was an Australian man who wanted to go and visit Ajahn Chah. And he traveled many miles for many days to go and to visit with him because he had followed him and knew that he was a fabulous spiritual teacher. And he finally got to the place and went to Ajahn Chah's hut. And he was able to get in this crowded room with a bunch of people. And he looked around and he saw people from all over the world that had come to see him, to see this teacher. And he sat on the outside of the group, hoping that Ajahn Chah would notice him. And he sat there for 2 hours with nothing. And finally, feeling a little disappointed, he got up and he walked out of the room and he headed across the courtyard to the monastery gates. And on the way there, he noticed some monks that were sweeping. And so he thought, well, I can earn some extra karma. I'll grab a broom and start sweeping. So he grabbed a broom and he's sweeping along and he's sweeping. And he'd been sweeping for about a half an hour. And then he felt a touch on his sleeve and he looked around and it was Ajahn Chah. And Ajahn Chah said something in Thai, and he kind of looked, and a translator came up and said, what Ajahn Chah says, when you sweep, sweep with all your heart. And he walked away. And that Australian man felt like he was so blessed. He said, I would have crossed the ocean many more times to hear that truth. I would come to the monastery many times because that idea changed my life. To live fully in everything that I'm doing. To be present. To show up. To love and to feel love. To work and be totally into the work that I do. And to rest and to totally relax and be into the rest. Whatever you are doing, give it all you got. Give it all you've got. As far as we know, we have one life. This one right here. We have one moment, one opportunity to live, to be these expressions of spirit in these bodies. So what does living your authentic self look like? What does it feel like for you? I know you've been there. All of us have been in that place at some time, haven't we? Where you've actually absolutely known that this is my authentic self right now. So what about making it your life journey for the rest of your life to live your authentic self and not give in to anything else, to just be present? What would you do differently? Who would you be? How would you feel? Imagine waking up in the morning and saying and knowing that you are going to be your authentic self in everything you do today. Are you willing to be who you are? I am one with Spirit, an authentic expression of my true divinity. So I invite you to close your eyes, holding this affirmation in mind. And then, if you feel comfortable, I invite you to put your hand or your hands on your heart. And let's say this together. I am one with Spirit. Together. I am one with Spirit. An authentic expression of my true divinity. Together. An authentic expression of my true divinity. Breathing into this truth. Imagine that it washes over you like a warm summer wave. And as this gentle wave moves, you can feel the current. You can feel the warmth and the coolness of the water. With every rise of the water, it lifts you up and reminds you of all you are. And as the current moves downward, it takes with it every thought, every feeling that you might have of not being good enough. It takes it away. And the water rises with the waves again and fills you with this light and this knowingness. Knowing that you are living in integrity with who you are, living your fullness, living from a place of love. Relaxing into this deeper expression of all that you are. Breathing in and breathing out. Feeling at peace. Feeling the gentle connection with Spirit. With your deeper and truer self. Breathing in and slowly allowing your awareness to return to this moment, to this time. breathing, loving, living, joyous, happy, powerful. Becoming aware of the light in this room. And then to open your eyes whenever you're ready. And so it is.
Where I live, there are rain.